All right, let's jump right into a really fascinating puzzle. We tend to think of research as, studying things that already exist. But what about design? Design is all about creating things that have never existed before. So, how can the act of making something totally new be considered a form of rigorous academic research? Well, that's the mystery we're going to solve. And at the heart of this whole thing is a really fundamental difference. Science, as we usually think of it, is all about observing and understanding the world as it is right now. It's looking for those universal laws. Design, though, it's completely different. It's all about speculation, imagining and building what could be. It's about proposing entirely new futures. And this slide just lays out that core tension perfectly. So that brings us right to the big question, doesn't it? If a designer makes a new prototype or some new kind of experience, how in the world do we prove that the insights they gained are actually valid, reliable knowledge? How do we make the case for creativity itself as a legitimate form of investigation? Now, believe it or not, this is not a new conversation. This is actually part of a long-running identity crisis for design, one that really started when it stepped into the formal world of universities. Let's take a look at how this whole debate got started. The debate really heated up back in the 1990s. European universities started offering PhDs in design, and all of a sudden, the field had to justify itself to an academic world that was built on hard science. Then, into the 2000s, the conversation went global, especially in Latin America, where the focus shifted a bit, looking at design's role in culture, society, and even in challenging old colonial ideas. And this gets us to the real sticking point, this institutional tension. See, universities, by their very nature, they demand scientific proof, things you can repeat, things that are objective. But design research, it often creates the exact opposite, unique, one-of-a-kind prototypes and really personal, subjective experiences. It's the classic square peg in a round hole problem. So, to really get our heads around this, we can break the whole problem down into 3 core philosophical questions. These really get to the heart of what design research is all about. First up, ontology. Now, that's just a fancy way of asking, what are we actually studying here? Is it the final thing, like a chair or an app? Or is it maybe the messy, creative journey the designer took to get there? Or is it the actual experience a person has when they use the thing? The cool thing is, the answer can be any or all of those. Second, epistemology. This one asks, okay, so what kind of knowledge are we creating? It's not a universal law like gravity, right? It's what we call situated knowledge. It's tied to a very specific context. It's transdisciplinary, meaning it pulls from art, tech, social sciences, you name it. And most importantly, it's knowledge about what's possible in the future. And finally, the big one, methodology, the how. How do we prove this knowledge is real? Well, you're not going to do it in a lab coat. It's validated through the actual practice of making things, by building prototypes, testing them, learning from what happens, and seeing the impact they have out in the real world. The brilliant design theorist Nigel Cross actually gave this whole idea a name. He argued that design has its own unique, designerly ways of knowing. It's a totally distinct form of intelligence, a way of understanding the world that's just as valid as the scientific or humanistic ways. It's all about making leaps of logic, visualizing things, and iterating. Okay, so now that we've got the philosophical stuff down, let's look at how this actually plays out in practice. Researchers have basically identified 3 main ways, or you could call them 3 faces, of doing design research. And what's great about this table is how clearly it breaks it all down. First, you've got research on design. Think of a historian analyzing the Bauhaus movement. Simple enough? Second, there's research for design, like a scientist developing a new sustainable material for designers to use. But then there's the third one, the most radical one, research through design, where the very act of designing is the research. And yeah, this research through design idea, this is the real game changer. It's the most innovative and, for traditional academics, definitely the most controversial. It says that when you're sketching, prototyping, and building, you aren't just getting ready for the research, you are doing the research. The making is the investigation. And it all works in this really cool iterative cycle. You frame a problem, you create a prototype to explore it, you test it out to see what you can learn, and then you iterate on the design. But here's the crucial part. The prototype is not the final answer. It's a question that you've made physical. It's a vehicle that literally generates new understanding. So, how do we finally resolve this tension between the university and the design studio? Well, the answer isn't to try and force design to become a science, it's to broaden our whole definition of what counts as knowledge in the first place. And this idea is illustrated so beautifully here. Thinkers like Boaventura de Sousa Santos have proposed what they call an ecology of saberes, or an ecology of knowledge. The idea is, instead of a hierarchy with science way up at the top, we should imagine a rich ecosystem where all different kinds of knowledge, scientific, artistic, indigenous, community-based, can all coexist and actually make each other stronger. You know, when we embrace this kind of thinking, the future of research gets way more interesting. It means we can finally see creativity as a rigorous method in its own right. It lets us value local and traditional knowledge that's been ignored for way too long, and at the end of the day, it gives us a much richer, more powerful toolkit for tackling those massive, complex, wicked problems, like climate change or social inequality, that no single discipline could ever hope to solve on its own. So I'll leave you with this final thought. This whole thing, it's not just some abstract academic debate. It's really about what we value as human knowledge. Just take a second and imagine. What incredible, just and sustainable futures could we start to design if we were just brave enough to broaden our definition of what it means to know?